So good afternoon, everybody. And today's speaker is Onkar Sadekar. He is from Central European University in Vienna. He is going to talk about explosive cooperation, social dilemmas, and voluntary sacrifice. So please, whenever you are ready.
Okay, thank you. And it's very nice to be finally giving a talk at NetPlace. I've attended a few, and uh, I'm happy that I'm finally able to give the talk here. Okay, so first I'll talk about my research a bit, which is related to game theory and social dilemmas. And in the second half of the talk, as some of you might know, I'll be talking about volunteering in academia. And uh, I had made a survey, so we'll see some of its results and I'll give what my opinions are. Okay, so without further ado, uh, yes. So the puzzle of cooperation. So in 2005, the Science magazine made a list of 100 unanswered questions spanning the sciences. So the questions were, can laws of physics be unified? And are we alone in the universe? And how and where did life on Earth arise? But one equally important question in this list was, how did cooperative behavior evolve? Because it's so crucial to our species and the progression of how we have evolved over millions of years. And in science also, this has been a very well-studied topic with multiple empirical studies showing that humans show altruistic behavior, that is, they uh, cooperate even in a competitive world. And it's a puzzle as to how and why do people do that. And the field of game theory deals with this kind of situation. It tries to answer this type of questions by simplifying the model a bit, which is it includes rational agents who can choose between two options, usually cooperation and defection. And there's a dilemma between social good, which is what's good for the society, versus self good, which is what's good for me. And we are more interested in the situations where these two options do not coincide, because that's when that's the puzzle, because most of the times there's a selfish benefit, but we still decide to do social good, and researchers have been trying to figure out why exactly. So to give a little bit more idea about this dilemma, or the social dilemmas as they are called, is that we represent them as a model in which players can have two choices, cooperation and defection. And based on each possible pair of those pair of strategies, you get a certain payoff, such as RSTP, which stands for reward, succor, temptation, and penalty for different pairs of combinations. So if both of you cooperate, you get a reward. And if you defect against another cooperator, you get the temptation payoff, and so on and so forth. So it's very natural to see that based on these different payoffs and their relative magnitude, we can define different types of dilemmas. And the most well-known amongst them is the prisoner's dilemma, where the temptation is often greater than the reward. So you are incentivized to defect against a cooperator. But what ends up happening here is that the Nash equilibria, or the preferred way in order to, uh, if you ask someone, if you ask a rational agent what's the best strategy, it comes out to be defection, because there's always an incentive to defect. And if both of you are rational, both of you will choose defection, and hence both of them will go to jail, instead of both of them being able to be free for quicker. So prisoner's dilemma is the most common example, and it was used to show that game theory can deal with such kind of situations where your personal good does not align with the common good. And hence, what happens in this particular case is that you choose to defect. However, this is not the only dilemma. There are other dilemmas, such as the snowdrift game, which is again defined by some different relative magnitudes of the payoff, and also the stack hunt game. So there are these different social dilemmas which are well studied, and the question was always to find out why does cooperation exist in these games, even when it is not a preferred strategy. And alternative mechanisms such as reciprocity, which means that uh, I help you, you help me, or kinship, which is I help you because we are related, and clustering and so on and so forth have been proposed to explain the deviation from this rational choice of defection, but lots of work still remains to be done. So what was the motivation for our work is that most of these games, as you saw, consisted only of a pairwise interaction. However, that's seldom true in real life. Like you interact in a you interact not just in a pair, but also in groups of three or more people. And what choices you make against an individual player may not be the same in a group of more than two people, because there might be some additional peer pressure effects, which these games do not consider. And secondly, if you know the epidemic models, especially one by Jacopini and some other people, they went from a complex contagion, which was including a bunch of people, to a simplicial contagion, which was highlighting the effect of the group interaction in particular. Similarly, in game theory, we have the public goods game, which is a equivalent of complex contagion in the sense that it involves more than two people, but the interactions are still pairwise. There's no inherent group structure. And this specific research aspect has been missing for some time. There have been some work with involving this higher order interaction, but there was no generalized framework as such. So what we did in our model is we considered that, okay, let's do the simplest case, is that instead of just having pairwise games, we can also have a higher number of games which involves three people. So, and correspondingly, we can define a payoff cube instead of a payoff matrix, and then see what happens in this case. So, for example, if you see the violet rectangle, it's the usual pairwise game where there are only two people involved. And based on what strategies you get, you will have these various payoffs as denoted by different shapes and colors. However, when you have three people, the number of possible combinations is, of course, much larger. It's 2 raised to 3, so 8 possible scenarios. And if we consider symmetricity, that means A playing against B is same as B playing against A and getting the payoff. Uh, the total number of unique payoffs gets reduced. And we can similarly introduce some more factors into this payoff metrics as I'll go there shortly. But the main idea of this model is that we don't have just pairwise games, but we also have some simplicial games which consist of three people. And what we consider as a underlying structure is a random hypergraph. And each player is part of multiple three-player or two-player interactions. And the fraction of these three-player interactions is denoted by delta. And players can copy strategies, which is a standard paradigm in the game theory literature, which is you play games against each other, you collect a payoff, and then if someone's payoff is higher than yours, you copy their strategy because you're learning from them in a way. And what this helps to decide is that strategies which are more robust or which give higher payoff tend to get selected in the long term, and we get an equivalent of what's the preferred strategy in such a scenario. So this is the how players can replicate strategy, and the payoff for mutual cooperation and defection are set to 1 and 0 to normalize the payoffs in a way. And the temptation, as before for the prisoners pairwise game, is triangle for T. and the sucker's payoff is S for square, and these remain the same even for the higher order games. But that's not the end of the story, because we have some unseen combinations of players which we never see in pairwise. So the first example is payoff for a cooperator against a cooperator and defector, which we denote by G, and payoff for defection against a cooperator and defector, which is W. So these scenarios represent a mixed group of players with different strategies, and if they interact, what's their payoff? And if you notice, so far we haven't made any comments or put any constraints on what these values could be. So this is a very generalized framework so far. And these two payoffs, the G and W, are present only for the 3-player games and have no equivalence in the 2-player games scenario. So in order to gain more insight into this problem, we do some theoretical calculations which are not very involved, but the framework which is used for them is the replicator equation, which is based on, as I said, the payoff difference between the players. And we are interested in the fraction of cooperators rho in the long-term state. So we can write down an equation for how this fraction of cooperators can evolve. And once we set that equation to 0 and solve it, we get the distribution of cooperators in the stationary state. And the equation is simply, you calculate the payoff for a cooperator on an average, and you calculate the average payoff in the system. And with some manipulation, you can get it in forms of the payoffs of the cooperator and payoffs of the defector. Now, what we are interested is in the non-trivial solutions, because here you can simply set rho equals to 0 and 1 and get a stationary state. But we are not interested. Like if you're starting from 0 cooperators, and since players can only copy the strategies, the system will not evolve. And hence we are not really interested in that case. So what we are more interested is when this pi c and pi d are equal, which means the average payoff of a cooperator and average payoff of a defector become equal. And to do this, we do a very simple calculation. So the expression might look intimidating, but it's not very intimidating. So if you remember, delta stands for the fraction of 3-player interactions in the system. So of course, 1 minus delta represents the 2-player interaction. And what we can see is, since we are looking at the payoff of a cooperator, against a cooperator, we get the payoff of 1, while against a defector, we get a payoff of S, as we can see from this payoff matrix in the bottom. And we multiply by the respective fractions present in the population. Similarly, for a 3-player interactions, now you have to consider that there are not just 2 players, but 3 players. So each term will be contributed by 2 additional players. And similarly, you have cooperators, which is still 1, but now you have rho square. And similarly, defector, but now you have 1 minus rho square. And what's the important term is like what a cooperator gets against another cooperator and defector, which is denoted by this 2 rho into 1 minus rho into G. So you can write down this payoff and payoff calculation for the cooperator, and similarly for a defector, and just set them equals to 0, because that will give us the solution of the replicator equation. And one thing to notice here is that once you simplify this expression, it is quadratic in rho. So we have just simplified. And when it's quadratic, it's a good news, because we know exactly the solutions of a quadratic equation. And we also know the exact conditions when they are real, positive, and so on and so forth. So we find this solutions, and we get 2 solutions, because of course quadratic equation has 2 solutions. And what we're interested is in if these solutions are feasible, are these solutions possible in a population of some n players? And for that, we can substitute these values of ABC, which are not very important to know the exact form, but for a prisoner's dilemma, we know the exact values, and we find out that indeed rho star, the solutions of this replicator equation are real valued as well as positive in certain regimes. And additionally, we see that there's a critical threshold of this delta beyond which only this rho star plus minus are real valued. So we need a certain fraction of these higher order interactions in order for to get a stable state for the survival of cooperators. And even though we have done this analysis for prisoner's dilemma, it can be readily extended to any other types of social dilemmas I mentioned in the beginning. And we use a special method called quasi-stationary, which involves just transporting the system back to a previously visited state to avoid going into an absorbing state. But this is a technical detail. What matters is that in this quasi-stationary state, in this probability distribution, the peaks of this probability distribution tell us the solution of the replicator equation or the evolutionary stable state of the system. And once we simulate the system, we find that indeed below this threshold, so for some certain set of parameters, the threshold was 0.33. We find that once you tune in the delta beyond 0.33, we see an emergence or the onset of a cooperation. And if we increase the delta to a large extent, we also see that the cooperation levels are very high, and it indeed becomes a much more prominent state of the system. However, to quantify it even more and see the trend with respect to delta, we plot these solutions obtained from the numerical simulations as a function of delta, which is the fraction of this higher order interactions. And we see that for various values of A, there's an explosive transition from no cooperation, which is rho star equal to 0, to a state where there are more than half of the players cooperating in the stationary state. So not only we get a cooperative state, like which means that cooperators are surviving in the long term, but also that this state is dominated by them. So the cooperators are in majority. So this is a very interesting result because it says that just by having two people, three people interact instead of two people, cooperation can be sustained to a much higher level, which we cannot see in a pairwise network. And this parameter A is actually dependent on this difference between G and W, which were the payoffs associated with this mixed group of strategies, which is cooperation, defection, and cooperation, defection, so on and so forth. And we are interested in these mixed strategies being dominated, and we indeed see that this is the case. And just to give a little bit of more context, this is also very similar to some of the previous works done in complex systems. So, for example, in contagion, we have seen this explosive transition to infected nodes when we introduce higher order interaction, and also for synchronization when we introduce some higher order interactions, we have seen this explosive transition. But this is the first time that we see such a thing in a game theoretical model. And there are other mechanisms in this other type of works, like for example, in synchronization, if you couple the degree with the coupling strength, then you get explosive transition. But for game theory, this is the first time we see such a kind of explosive transition. However, the question here arises that since you have two states, two solutions, what what will determine which of these two states is achieved in this framework? So what I mean to say is that we have a bistable solution, and you are unsure at this point as to which solution you will end up in. And for that, what we do is, by the way, before I go, the dotted lines are the analytical results. So they match very well with the numerics, but that's just a side note. So coming back to the point I was saying, so what determines which of the two solutions is reached? So for that, what we do is we start the system from various initial conditions. So here the x-axis is time and y-axis is the fraction of cooperators in the system. And we see that once we start from different values of this initial cooperators, we see that there's a critical threshold of the initial cooperators beyond which we reach the other state. So if you are beyond this critical mass of initial cooperators, you reach a state with very high number of cooperators. And if you start with a state with very low number of cooperators, you reach zero cooperators, which means everyone defects. And this solution is also predicted by the replicator equation. It's an unstable solution, but we still have it. And when we verify the results, we still see that it matches well, and it highlights the importance of this critical mass of initial cooperators. So to summarize very quickly, we formulated a general framework to extend this pairwise symmetric games to incorporate higher order interactions. And we found out that we can get an explosive transition to cooperation based on a critical number of higher order interactions, which is delta. And moreover, there's a critical initial mass of cooperators, which is needed to sustain this cooperation. So you not only need a higher order of, you not only need higher order interactions, but you also need a critical mass of cooperators which can sustain this cooperation. And just to acknowledge the amazing people I met through this collaboration. So Andrea is, I think, not I think, I know. He was a PhD student at QMUL, and I think he recently submitted his thesis. And Vito and Jesus, I'm sure you know, they are quite well known in the field. And of course, Fede, who's my supervisor at CU. And this was an amazing work of collaborating and getting to work and know these people. And if you're interested more, you can go to the archive or scan this QR code if you want to know more. And that concludes this part, and I would be very happy to take questions, comments, and suggestions. I hope I'm in time.
Yes, so if anybody has question on this part, just unmute and ask.
Well,
say
I
that-
have a question about what you want to do next about this, you know, because you summarized, but what is the future work that you're thinking now?
Right. Okay, so I think the future work is that we studied a very, very simple case of a random uniform hypergraph, and there are a lot of options and interesting avenues, such as how does a heterogeneous degree distribution affect this? Is cooperation sustained more or less, or what's the effect of like ZLOTs? Like if you put cooperators at very specific locations, how does it affect? But also on a little bit different note, what I'm also doing currently right now is um, all of these works assume that the dilemmas are just present in our society, or they are just there. Nobody questions as to how they arise in the first place. Like we looked at a particular game, but uh, this hasn't been very well studied as to why did this game come up in the first place, and why is it important to study this? So what we are looking right now is if players are also allowed to change their payoff metrics. And of course, you can extend this to higher order payoff matrices, but
Yeah.
that's a very complex scenario because the number of parameters is simply too high to do anything
Yeah, that's
analytical.
also something I was thinking about. What about payoffs, the perceived payoff that is different than what
Yes.
it is, you know?
Yeah, because
Maybe, for example, if you think about money, the same amount of money is different perceived, no?
Right. I think there have been some works in a more biological context where the payoffs can be thought of as the environment and the resources available, and you can migrate or switch from one environment to other. And based on the relative abundance and competition and cooperation, the different environments can have different best strategies to interact or stay. So that's also a good motivation to study these kind of scenarios.
There are a lot of works also in economic psychology.
Yes.
So for example, it's even if it's equivalent mathematically, but it's not the same if I give you 10 euros and then let you decide if you want to double it or no, blah, blah, blah. Or if I say, okay, I'll give you 20 later, but nothing, you have to pay now. But it's equivalent, but psychologically there's a complete difference.
Right. I mean,
so,
there's
yeah.
always this thing that I'm a physicist, so I'm also responsible for some of this, is that usually we make models without thinking too much about the reality. And of course, a lot of people in these experimental fields and behavioral economics, psychology have tried to study how exactly these things can be different, which are not captured by our models. And I hope, in future, there are more interdisciplinary collaborations, not just among physicists, but also people who are actually working with people about these things.
So have you managed to find someone else from another discipline? Because for the question you were posing.
Yeah. So we actually have a cognitive science department in at our university. And
sorry, again?
A cognitive science department.
Okay.
And they do a lot of this experimental work about when do you cooperate and when do you give your opponent a chance to cooperate or be this thing. But the problem is that when people from different fields are interacting, you need to agree upon a common vocabulary, and that takes a bit of time. Like I've talked to a few people, and it will take time, but hopefully one day.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions?
May I ask a question? And
yes, please.
Be more quite general.
Sure.
So, this type of discontinuous transition has been observed in many contexts. Many problems when you consider the higher order interaction, right? In complex simplicial contagions, interpolation, synchronization here in the game theory.
Yes.
Can you think of from a theoretical perspective or from the mathematical perspective, what caused this just
Yeah, yeah.
continuous transition, or if you think from the mathematical perspective, the equations or whatever, if they have something in common, that leads.
Yeah. Okay. I actually have answers in two different perspectives. So first is the physical intuition beyond what this means, and I think the part which I didn't elaborate a lot on is this parameter A, which is given by 2 times G minus W. And if you remember, G was the payoff a cooperator gets against playing against a cooperator and a defector. Okay, so which means that we are looking at two cases in the 3-player interaction when cooperators are in a majority versus a defectors are in majority. And what we are saying here is that if the cooperators are in majority scenario gets higher payoff, then as we increase A, we see that the critical threshold decreases, which means you are giving more payoffs to the majority cooperators in a 3-player interaction, and hence the number of these interactions needed also decreases. So that's sort of like the physical intuition that in this mixed group of 3 players, if you are incentivizing the majority of cooperators, then you are getting cooperation as a more stable solution, even with lesser number of these interactions. However, there's a paper in Science Advances. I don't remember the authors, but the paper's title is Universal Framework to Explosive Phenomena in Complex Systems. It's by 2 mathematicians. And what the mathematical idea is that you always have, in many of these systems, 2 sort of independent orthogonal parameter space in a way. And if you vary among these 2 dimensional phase space, the equations that you get, like this differential equation that you can, one second. Yeah, this sort of differential equation, sorry. Yeah, this sort of differential equation for the observable evolution with time. Since you have these 2 parameters and 2-dimensional phase space, it always comes out to be a quadratic. And if it's quadratic, then of course you have 2 solutions. And if you have 2 solutions, they are separated by this discontinuous sort of a jump. And because the determinant of this quadratic equation will have a critical threshold beyond which the real solutions will exist or not. And they have, of course, made it more mathematical. I'm explaining it in a very hand-waving way because I'm not a mathematician. But that is the main idea, that you have some sort of a 2-dimensional space and you're varying your system parameters along this 2-dimensional space. And hence you get this form of equation, which is found universally in these kind of systems. So I'm not very sure about the synchronization paper, but Jacopo's paper, I remember very clearly that it was also quadratic, and then you can do the exact same analysis. Having said that, I also don't think it's trivial to just mention that, because you can find such a system, but you also have to, of course, give an interpretation as to what these things mean. Like you can say that, yeah, it's still a universal framework, you have just gotten the same as what others, but I think what's important is that it also has some physical meaning. Like in this case, it's very nice meaning that when 3 players interact, it's possible that in a 3-player interactions, 2 players cooperate, 1 defect, and they can live in harmony. So interpretations like this is, I think, what makes it a nicer thing, even though there's a universal framework for such situation. Does it answer? I don't know. I
Right,
think.
right. Yeah, thank you very much. Is that the science paper written by like the two mathematicians from Oxford
I think so. I think so.
in 2011 or 12 something? I have some impression about that paper, but I haven't read
Okay,
it
okay.
carefully. But yeah, I guess that is the one.
Yeah.
Thank you
I
very
think
much.
so. I'll maybe send it after this talk.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Okay. Uh, any more questions? Okay. Is it okay if I go on to the next part?
Yeah.
Okay.
You can jump to the second part.
Okay. So I guess most of you are waiting for this part more than the other. So today I'm going to talk about volunteering in academia. So just to give a little bit of context and why I thought this could be a nice idea is uh, when I was in my undergraduate days, like in my bachelor's and master's, we had a lot of the student clubs, and I think a few of us used to spend more time in these clubs and activities than in our classrooms. And we always felt nice because we got to know many new people and these things. Um, and I think that hasn't changed even after I joined the PhD. So uh, right now I'm involved in a bunch of things. So at our department, we have a computational facility for server, and I'm the server admin of that. Uh, Secondly, we also have a smaller journal club at our department, and I was involved in organizing it a bit. Then if you follow the NetSite Twitter account, uh, it's me who tweets about it. So few days back, if you saw the tweet about Hitchhiker's Guide to Galaxy reference, that was me. And if you have also been to the NetSci website, uh, I was involved in designing a bit for the upcoming conference. So my point is that I have had some experience with volunteering, and I have also came to realize a few things over the years. And uh, I just wanted to talk about this, but I also realized that other people may have some different opinions about it. And that's why a few days back, I also sent out this survey, which Gabriel didn't fail until the deadline. So his results are not included. But I'll just discuss some of these results here, and then we can discuss what you guys think about it as well. So just to give some statistics, so the background of the responders were mostly PhD students, and I think a few masters and postdoc students. Very sadly, there were no faculty, and I think it would have been nice to also get some perspective of people who are at a different career stage. Um, and the first thing was to clarify what exactly we mean by what is academic volunteering. And I had given a bunch of questions as to what it means. And sort of as expected, I think organizing a 1 or 2 day event for your department, most of the people said that, yeah, it's definitely academic volunteering. While helping your supervisor with their work, the least number of people said that it's academic volunteering. So this was sort of as expected. Uh, for me, the surprising part was that peer reviewing the journal articles, uh, only almost half of the people said that it was academic volunteering. And I was a little bit surprised by this result specifically because uh, for me, like whenever someone says academic volunteering, that's the first thing that comes to my head because nobody pays you for it, and you still do it because you do it for others. And for me, that sounded like the definition of academic volunteering, but it was not according to half of the people, which was uh, quite interesting. and then bunch of other things, which maybe I can send the slides later to look at it in more detail. Then this was a more straightforward question, like how many hours is fine to volunteer in a week? And most people gave a middle ground, which is 30 minutes to 2 hours. And there was a corresponding question as to how many hours you volunteer in a week. And the average number of that was actually 1 hour, but with large fluctuations. And people actually had lots of comments as to it depends on multiple things, and sometimes it's less, sometimes it's more, and rightfully so. But on an average, it's around 1 hour. The next question was incentive to volunteer. So the question was, if you're being compensated in some way, would you volunteer for more time? And there were 3 options: yes, no, and maybe. And does anyone have any guesses as to how many people said no? Like a rough percentage, a very rough percentage. Like they said that no matter what the compensation, we won't volunteer.
I
Anyone?
guess I hope it's I, but I don't know.
Okay. So actually, no, the percentage of no that if you're being compensated is actually very low. It's almost 1/5 of the responders who said that. And 50%, half of them were like, yes, we will definitely volunteer for more time if we are being compensated in some way.
But I won't be volunteering anymore, no? If you're-
Yeah, we will come to that. We'll come to that. Yes.
Okay, sorry.
Yes. And half of them were on the fence, like, yeah, maybe we will, we won't. And my guess is that they're not sure what does compensation mean, like if it's monetary or if it's something else. And I was actually a bit like unhappy about this situation, because it means that maybe people have the feeling of that it's not properly rewarded in some way, and that's the reason why people are maybe not volunteering. Then the second, a very again interesting question was volunteering and contractual working hours. So the question was, should academic volunteering, whatever way you define, be counted in the weekly working hours? So in our contracts, we have this clause of working for 30 to 40 hours each week. And should this be counted in that? And any guesses here as to the options were again same, like yes, no, maybe. Anyone has any guesses?
The majority of yes.
Yes. So this was, I think, as expected. Actually, the no were very less. I think maybe just 1 or 2 respondents. So majority of the people said that yes, it should be counted in the working hours, and not as something you do, after you go back and things like that. So this was also very interesting, and also a very clean result in a way, like people seem to be very univocal on this thing. The next question was about exploitation during volunteering. So the question was, have you ever felt that you were exploited? Which might seem like a contradiction, because volunteering means that you voluntarily choose to do something. So exploitation may mean that well, you agreed to it, and so it's on you, kind of thing. But surprisingly, the percentage of people who said yes was actually 40%, which is not a non-trivial fraction. And some people also went into a bit more detail that that for example, one person said that they were asked to review X papers, but then they were given much more papers and X was not small. And one person said that, no, but I can see that happening. So this was a little bit worrying, or it's still worrying, that 40% of the people have been have felt that they have been exploited during the voluntary work, and which to me is maybe something we should talk about more in future, because this needs to be addressed. Why do people feel that, and why is the case? But I mean, I'm just showing the results, and we can then come back and choose some specific things again to talk about. The next question was, do you consider volunteering to be necessary and essential? And here I think people were quite split up again. So 40% said yes, 1/5 people said no, 30% were on the fence, and there are also some very logical statements that if it's essential, then it's part of my job, which I agree, and then it's not volunteering anymore. And again, another viewpoint that they're essential, but they should still be compensated because it's maybe something else than your PhD or your rest of the academic life. And finally, the question, which I think was mainly directed at PhD students, was if you should consult your supervisor or not before deciding to volunteer for activities. And here again, it was quite split up, that people who said yes, they were in minority, but there were a lot of, how do I say, there were lots of intricacies in a way, that people said that it depends on a lot of situations, it depends on how much time you spend, it depends on if it's being counted in the weekly work, and so on and so forth. So this survey, I mean, I felt a little bit unhappy that people seem to have feeling of exploitation and not properly compensating, and also the fact that people are willing to volunteer more if they are being rewarded. And based on that, I also have some views which are, I'll quickly say, and then we can all talk. First, I feel that it's essential both for personal growth and sustaining academic activities. I also feel it's not regulated, and most people do not have a good idea what's acceptable and what is not, including me in the previous years and also maybe sometime now. Third, which I think I've seen this a lot, and I guess it's also true here, is that it's very unbalanced. So there are only a few people who tend to show up at all of these activities and do most of the work, while most of the people do not go to any activities. And as usual, a very blanket statement is that we need systematic change, but at this moment, I honestly don't know how we can. I don't have any specific pointers other than like agree before you volunteer, or talk to other people as to what's acceptable or not. But I don't know what exactly can be done to make a more healthy atmosphere. So yes, those were my views, and happy to discuss or go back to any chart and talk about it more. Also, if you have any contrasting viewpoints, please feel free.
I have some comments on some
Yes.
of the results. So
Sure,
first
sure,
of all, for reviewing article that part, you said like 50% of people don't think this is volunteering work.
Yeah.
And my guess is, I'm not sure, but because you have some master students who participate in this survey, so
Sure.
maybe some of them, or I don't know what fraction, but some of them may haven't done this peer reviewing work, because
Sure.
I think many people believe this work, they pay you for that.
Sure. Okay.
So
okay.
if they're not clear about this process, then they may believe, okay, this is a job, this is something, yeah. So
okay. I understand. And just a small comment. So out of this 23, only 2 were master students.
Okay.
So 21 responders were actually PhDs or postdocs, which I hope know some level of peer reviewing. So even if you consider that the two master students didn't consider this as the academic volunteering, I think 8 PhDs or postdocs still thought that it's not academic volunteering, which is 8 out of 23 is like
I think for
1/3 people. Yeah.
postdoc will be quite surprising that
Yeah.
they should have some experience in.
Yeah. Exactly. So I agree, but I'm not sure. I think people maybe genuinely believe that it's not academic volunteering. Yeah, which is yes.
I have another comment is there was one person saying like the reviewing task goes to very few people, and this one, yes.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. So if one feels being exploited, that means they're not actually volunteering, but they kind of are forced, but they claim or they have to claim they're volunteer to do the job. So for example, like for reviewing paper, I don't understand this very well, but if you're reviewing paper, you have the complete freedom to say no, right? If they ask you if you want to review this, say I have no time, then you can reject it. So
Right.
you don't have to do the job, right? If you don't want to.
Right.
Maybe it was for a conference. I
Yeah,
suppose
yeah.
it was for a conference.
I
That
think
was
it
I
was
thought.
yeah.
Okay.
Or a SAD,
Yeah,
like whatever.
yeah.
Like if you're in a program committee, then like also because this exact case, so actually this is a good point because since you don't have any incentive to do this activity, if you want to, let's say, just withdraw from doing it, there's nothing stopping you other than your own morals or ethics or this thing, which can happen. I mean, I'm like people may have genuine reasons to pull out, but also it's not, the system is not in a way that it will punish people who just back out at the last time. Like you can't do anything about it. Like something similar about this activity as well. Like you guys are organizing this amazing seminar and like I said, okay, I'll give a talk, but let's say at 15 minutes before the talk, I said, yeah, okay, I'm not in the mood or something. I don't want to give a talk or something like that. Then it's there's no, it's unlikely to happen, but even in those cases, there's nothing that can be done. Like you're not being accountable in a way. Like there's of course accountability at a bigger scale that uh, you seem unprofessional and these things spread, but I think volunteering and accountability, not sure how well they go hand in hand.
So it's like you are committed to this beforehand and afterwards something. So in my opinion, this point may not be a systematic problem, but more related to how you organize this thing. But because you can always imagine that in group work, even in the undergraduate group work, you always had people who do most of the job and some people So, but if the organization, if the thing is properly organized, you may able to try to minimize these imbalance in the group. So from this perspective, I will not see this as a systematic problem, but it's more like how you organize things may not be well organized. So if you have this imbalance inside this.
I see. I have one small point about that is that I think when you volunteer for these things, you don't have any direct sort of selfish benefit for yourself. Like let's say when you're doing a group project, doing it well just for yourself is already a good incentive to make sure, because you get good grades or you get a good paper or whatever. Like your how do I say, intrinsic
You have the motivation to
you
do.
have the motivation to
Yeah.
do it. But here there's no motivation. If you don't do it, like yeah, well, okay, kind of thing. But yeah, I agree. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so I guess this will be more depending on this kind of regulation. Like,
Yeah.
Can I make a comment on your views at the end?
Yeah. Please.
Yeah, like about how to inform people that the volunteering part is important also for building a community. I mean, I don't know what the reason may be, but I think that sometimes is this that there is no much information on how having a community and working as a community is important. And sometimes people do just their jobs, and you know they don't really try. Okay, so maybe giving information, it's important in this part. I mean, it's not convincing people that they must volunteer because it won't be volunteering anymore, no?
Right.
But saying that having a community and working for it is really important. Yeah, this is crucial, I think.
I absolutely agree with it. I think what I've seen is that when even like giving a talk at this seminar, like most people would think that, and it is in a way like extra effort which doesn't directly, like contribute to your, the next paper you're writing or whatever. But I think it's important in the long term because, as you said, you build these connections and there's some benefit which is not immediately seen, but it's better for your better for you in the long term. And I feel that not enough people maybe realize and understand this, and maybe people like you guys who have more experience with organizing and volunteering to like tell that yes, it does have some benefit and should volunteer and this kind of thing. I completely agree that people need to be told more about the benefits of such kind of things. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, for me it's not even, I mean, it's clear that there is a benefit behind behind volunteering. You somehow you get to know people from in the academic life. This is very important because you start collaboration,
right.
And also it is sort of a training for your personal skills as person. And if you want to build a group in the future, your own research group, it's important to know how to deal with people and get engaged in the activity of your university, of your department.
Right. I agree.
But the fact that it's not regulated here, you were saying here.
Yes.
What's behind this phrase? Like, what would you imagine a regulation?
How can you regulate something so diverse, because there are so many different tasks?
Yeah. I agree. So I don't mean regulation in a general sense. Like, I don't mean that all volunteering activities should be regulated. I mean, in specific scenarios, it should be regulated in the way that, let's say if you're taking up some specific activity, like let's say peer reviewing articles, I mean that it's not regulated in the sense that at any point you will be asked to just review more articles or, like, I want to give some examples, but I'm not sure if those are good examples to say here. No, but what I mean is many times you get into doing something without knowing what is expected. You're just like, okay, you have to do this. And of course, as time passes, it does not remain what it is. And then it's very hard to get out of it, or just it's more or different from what you expected. And I meant regulated in this sense that all the involved parties should be very clear beforehand as to what is the expected work, and if something more is expected, how to go forward with it. That's what I meant by not regulated. I'm also saying this a little bit from the perspective of exploitation, because there are some things for which you are compensated in some way or the other. But those compensations are based on the first agreed upon, like contract in a way. But those things do not change once the work gets more or work gets different or something like that. So that also needs to be involved in the first talk that you have when you decide what you're going to volunteer for.
No, yeah, I agree. But among all the things that you mentioned, like what is considered volunteering, no? Most of them, I have to say, from the perspective of a PhD student, you have no idea how to enter in those things, right? I mean, like, let's, I mean, being a student representative, okay, I mean, but there's gonna be one maybe in all of your group that's gonna do that. So it's not something that everyone can do. One people is gonna be, all right. And then, like, all the organizing parts, most of the times, like, you don't know how to enter in those organizations and like even satellites, conferences and stuff, unless it's your department asking and maybe your supervisor asking, can you help me? Then you usually don't get inside those things. So those part of volunteering are not available to you yet, or you have no idea how to get inside, or kind of. Peer review, you don't ask for that. You just, some point, something happens and they see you. But I mean, it's later in the PhD for sure, after the first papers. And then, yeah, helping your peers. Honestly, I voted no, because I mean, I can help my sister as well. I mean, it's not, I don't know, it's social something, it's, well, I don't know, I don't consider it too much as volunteering in this sense, strict sense. Like, I can have a coffee and talk with you and help, but okay, that's because we're friends. I wouldn't do it because if I hate you, I would not do it. While if I have to do a peer review, I will do it maybe anyway. It doesn't matter if we're friends or not. I mean,
but I mean, if you hate someone, then peer review can be very powerful.
Yeah. No, but not in that sense. Or like, you know what I mean? Like another example, you know, whatever. It's just so yeah, volunteering, the fact that it's unbalanced, I think it's because of this. There are some that maybe by character are more prone to be expansive and extrovert and ask people and be more active, and so they will open these things for them.
Right,
But
right,
for most other people, they don't even have the option or have no idea what it is.
right, right.
And the peer review, in my opinion, is something that should be considered as part of work as a researcher, and like you have to do like as the same as you have to do 5 papers a year, I don't know, whatever. You have to do 10 peer reviews, or like for each paper you have to publish, one you have to review. I don't know, something that regulates it, because you are a researcher and you are part of science community and you have to do peer review, otherwise it's not science anymore. But that's
yeah.
another problem. That's not academic volunteering for me. That's something that is part of the job.
I agree on peer reviewing,
Yeah,
even if
exactly.
I haven't. Yeah, I mean, it's part of growing up as a researcher, I guess. And then it's your job, because the PhD, if you are doing a PhD, is this one, no? Is this like,
So
I don't know, my view.
I said too many things, so please go ahead, Onkar.
I have 2 points. First is that, yes, I agree that it's more like your connections sort of help to get into this activity, and like if you know someone, then you're more likely to approach them for organizing or whatever. And yes, I think that's an issue for sure, definitely. And maybe it can be changed, like even let's say being a program chair at these conferences and stuff, it's based very much on how much the organizing committee knows you, kind of thing. So yes, that I agree, it should be made more open and transparent in a way. Peer reviewing, I feel a little bit slightly different opinion, because you said that it should be included as a part of your PhD or whatever. Being very I don't know how to say it, like being very technical. I'm being paid to do my PhD, which does not include peer review. So saying that peer review is part of my work sounds like some extra work which is not included in my PhD contract. And you go into industry or jobs in IT sector, anything which you do beyond your agreed upon things, you are compensated in some way or the other. And I think in academia, we have reached this point where it's ran like, of course, I don't want to go into how corporations, the publishing corporations go into exploiting and blah, 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 and papers are not open access and these things. But even then, I think peer reviewing the journal articles, it can't be both way. Like if you're including it as a part of the work contract, then it should be mentioned in the contract that you have. And if it's on top of that, then you should be paid more or whatever, like something like that. I agree, you do it as a goodwill towards the community, and because it's also some sort of a reciprocity, like you review someone else's paper and someone else reviews your paper, and that's sort of decide which papers are better with the community and these things. But I still think it's a little bit I don't know.
But then why should you peer review any paper?
Sorry?
Yeah, in the sense of the social dilemma that you explained before,
yeah,
there is no reason why you should. What's the payoff in? It's normal that most of the people defect and don't peer review, and that's why the peer review system is horrible now.
Sure. But first thing is, I think, of course, we don't think of this while reviewing a paper, but getting a paper into a good journal, I think, ensures a smoother pathway for your future in a way. And how you decide which papers get into a better journal is of course, by what your peers think about it. So if you want to have a good path for yourself, you have to review papers for others in the hope that someone else reviews your paper and you do like you ensure somewhat of a better future for us. But this is a very indirect effect, like it's based on
Yeah.
if then, and
That's the problem, because you most of the time your name is not there. Like
yes,
if you do a review, or you
yes,
don't see the reviewer name.
yeah,
And even if he was there, you never will get a reviewer that of a paper that you reviewed. And I
right,
mean, and also as a side, you should not, like the way I see the peer review is like the scientific community is reviewing your paper, represented by that person, no? So the fact that you peer reviewed or not another paper should not impact on the result of the peer review of your paper.
sure,
Because I mean,
of course,
if scientifically it's good or not doesn't depend
of course,
from the fact that you peer reviewed or not.
yeah, of course. I also think it depends on what stage of your career you are. Like, I mean, if you're a faculty, then I would say that yeah, you should peer review. But PhD, I'm a still bit like, because at the it's a degree that you're receiving and it has certain obligations that you have to finish at the end of it. For a faculty job, I don't know if there are any such specific goals. And maybe that's also a difference we need to keep in mind.
I know some senior researchers who do not do any peer review,
Yeah,
Yeah, I know them
and
too.
they are senior faculty, but they have no, as you said, we have obligations towards papers, towards money, funding, teaching and stuff. There is no incentive to do peer review, so maybe as a PhD student you might do it because you have a lot of time. In a way, you don't have so many obligations. But the more you go forward, the less time you have, and the less you're gonna say, okay, it's good for the community, I do it. You're not gonna do it. You would prefer organizing a conference if you have to choose the 1 hour a week you have for academic volunteering, no?
so it's not about time, it's about priorities.
But I mean, the priorities influence the way you choose time. If you don't have time, even if you have priority on top, but you don't have time, you have to do the things that you have to do first. Like you have to teach, and that's something that you cannot put it down from the priorities. No?
Yeah, that's exactly my point. Like there are some essential things, and this comes at the bottom of the priority. Then yeah.
So for
I don't know.
For peer review thing, I kind of agree with Onkar in the sense that I also believe no one has the responsibility to do the peer review. Although you could say that doing this is very good for you, either you're a PhD student or your academia, or sorry, your academic or whatever. There are many good sides. I agree, but that doesn't mean that this is your responsibility to do that, right? And especially you are actually you are doing the job for the journal. I mean, that's a direct relation, right? They earn money and they not really hire you. They ask you to do the job and don't pay you. So technically, I think this is unfair. And also, I think now many journals have difficulty finding reviewers because it's unfair and at least the mechanism. I agree. So you could say, yes, I mean, doing this as a PhD student, you can learn how to evaluate the work, whatever. And as maybe a more senior academic, you say doing this is good to the community, whatever. So, and indeed, I think now the system works because many people believe in this. So they are really volunteering in this job because they believe it's good. And so I would say this is quite an unstable
Yeah.
system in the sense that now is I think somehow
Right.
collapsing in the sense that if you don't
Right.
have time, whatever, no one
Right.
will do the job and the system will not really work.
Right.
But still, I don't think this should be included in the responsibility of either a PhD student or
Right.
academics, because it doesn't make sense. I mean, this
Right.
is yeah.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, we shouldn't find the situation shouldn't be that we have to find reasons as to why people should do it. I think a much better situation is when people have to think twice before deciding not to do such things. And I don't know how that's achievable. But I agree, it's a very unsustainable situation. Yeah, it depends on goodwill of people and how much they are motivated enough to sort of contribute to the public good.
Yeah, I think this problem is more complicated because I heard people saying that because people were saying why the journal will not pay the reviewer to do the job, and they said that if this is related to money and you may do this for money and you may lose some kind of fair
Right.
this kind of job. Yes, I agree this might happen. So this is maybe more delicate.
Right.
This to solve this question requires more.
Wait, why being paid would be a problem?
I don't know. Like if you earn money by doing the reviewing, and you may do as much as you can, or because I think they don't have regulation what you write and what decision you make, whatever. So
like in any contract,
what?
like in any contracts, you have regulations that you put in place when you have the contract, and you give money because for that. You don't pay money just because, right? I mean, if you ask someone for a review, you have to do it in a certain amount of time. You have to do some in a specific way, and blah 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 blah. You cannot write things that don't make sense. I don't know how you can regulate these things, but you should be able to do that, no?
I think maybe this is more like the excuses for not paying this kind of job. But well, I don't know, because I think in the science community, there's no journal paying the reviewer for this job, right? We can't see what is the negative side of.
But actually, there was a thing I was talking to someone else, and it was like we could have also like some researchers that instead of doing research, they try to replicate the paper of someone else and send another paper saying, okay, I confirm, I do not confirm, does it work, does it not work, even without doing anything new. And the same could be done, for example, for reviewers. You can have people that are always updated on what is done in that particular field, and they only review papers. It's something that we can do. I think if we want to change the system in a way, and we all say that agree that it's not done well, it's not correct, and it's unsustainable and everything, then that's something we should work on. No? Thinking out of the box. You cannot put more load of things to do onto academics. I don't see many more way out.
Like slightly tangential, but I think also the introduction of these generative AI models.
Yeah, exactly.
I wouldn't be surprised if they employ them at some point in future, eliminating, I mean, not completely eliminating, I think you still need maybe for time being, but maybe that can be a possible scenario. Not sure if it's a good solution, but it looks like a possible scenario.
Actually, previously I had this conversation with Danilo, our colleague and friend. And so basically he said that this like ChatGPT or this AI model should do this type of job. Maybe in 10 or 20 years, you can see.
Yeah.
Especially for mathematics, you should be able to see if a proof is right or wrong,
Mhm.
right? And it's just a matter of logical steps.
I mean, if the ChatGPT can evolve in such a way, then I'm very happy to see.
No, I mean, not ChatGPT alone. I think like maybe combined it with something like Wolfram Alpha or
Yeah,
something.
logic related.
Yeah. Because I mean, ChatGPT it gives like wrong addition things. It's
Yeah, it's just a
doesn't-
generative text.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, it's not hard. I think maybe people have already started doing it.
Anyway, we're gonna discuss a bit more on this also in the panel.
Yes, of
net
course.
side,
Yeah.
in a way related to this problem.
Yes. So I mean,
Um,
I'll probably keep this survey just open, and if you want, I can give the combined result about anything which you, if you want to use, you can use that.
Yeah, we should probably do other Google Forms like this
Yeah.
for the panels.
Yeah.
At least one.
Yeah, it was a very good idea, nice idea.
Thank you. Also, I mean, since I manage the website of Nets, I can just put it on the main page. But yes.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, no, but just to say one last thing I was thinking before, that maybe some of the, like we or someone in general, maybe also, I don't know, talking with some of the societies that are out there, we should work towards some kind of, I don't know, thing to be written, just to say, for example, why you should think, why you think volunteering is important in our field, etc. What are the things that you need to do? Or, for example, more specific, you have to do a journal club, and then okay, let's have a meeting with people that do journal clubs, and I'm successful, and make it, try to understand what it works, what it doesn't, how we should do it, when should do it, blah 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 blah, and maybe try to write these things somewhere, and it should be done probably maybe also in conferences in these societies. You can have a section where you have all these resources, then every university can like every group can start to do these things as a reference, no? There are things already like this. I was thinking there was a one, for example, Google form also to say which complex network statistics should be in every paper when you have a new network that you're publishing. And there was all of this and then you print something like a A4 paper in which you have, okay, these things, and then you try to say, okay, we as a complex network scientist have decided that it should be, this is the way it should be done. And then it should, and we can probably do the same things also for volunteering and all of these things. We should work on these things. Maybe
I
we
think
were thinking also doing this.
I think the advisory board of young researchers complex system society is the way to go.
Yes.
But yes,
But no, I honestly believe
I
that's
completely
the
agree.
only way. You have to go broad to, yeah.
I agree. Yes.
We can also do it ourselves, like create, instead of having a seminar, we were thinking about this as well. Like have a 1 hour discussion on, let's say, how to do a journal club, whatever, and then come up with something that we're already doing a little bit like this with the blog. But if it's focused and it's only this, maybe we can come up with good ways to. That's something that we were thinking for next year, like next academic year, to expand. Probably it's a good way to go forward. let's see. Because otherwise it just remains among us and that's
Right.
not good. Thank you, by the way.
Okay, so I think the discussion has gone very, very far. We can continue discussing.
Definitely. Yes.
But for
That's it.
today, maybe, yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Let's
Thanks, guys, again for inviting me, and it's very nice talking to you. And
Thank you.
all the best for your future endeavors, and hopefully see you at Vienna for next time.
Thank you very
Yes.
much, Onkar. Very nice talk and very nice topics.
Thank you. Bye. Good night.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye bye.